Okay, it's 5:05. Rahul, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. All right. Thanks, Sid. Guys, welcome to another masterclass webinar organized by SSI India. While we wait for the last few people to join in, I'm just going to take you through the basic rules for today. All attendees will not be able to use your microphone or share your video, but you will be able to chat with the panelists by using the chat function at the bottom or at the top of your screen. Now you can use this function to let us know if you're facing any technical problems, but for any subject related matter, however, please use the Q&A window. This is separate. Take a look, read through the questions that have already been asked, and if yours is similar, or if you see a question that you like, go ahead and click the like button to upvote it, and that particular question will get a higher priority. Lastly, we will be sharing a feedback link at the end of this webinar, so please take the time to tell us what you thought of the session once we're done. All right, so we have covered the science part last month with the Science of Diving series, and we are now concentrating on the ecological side of things. We had a great marine ecology session with Naveen last week, and in the weeks to come, we have exciting sessions on sea turtle ecology, coral identification, and fish identification as well. This series of ecology webinars is being conducted by biologists that are actively involved in the field of research or conservation, and we're very happy to have them on board. The webinar series is, however, based on topics that are offered as SSI Ecology specialty courses. So if you are interested in getting certified for any of these subjects, please get in touch with us for more details, and we'll be happy to fill you in. For today, however, we are looking closer at some of the more mysterious and maybe misrepresented creatures, sharks, mantas, and rays. And our host, our speaker for today is Diya Das. Diya was one of those who knew that she wanted to become an environmental scientist in the 5th grade, and she's more than fulfilled her dream. She's gone on to get her master's degree in marine biodiversity and conservation, and she has worked on research projects investigating the abundance, distribution, habitat, and movement of sharks, rays, and other elasmobranchs in and around the amazing Azores Islands. She has now come back to India to work with the Dakshin Foundation, who are the amazing team that is helping us with more than one of our ecology-based masterclasses. So without saying too much more, I'm going to hand over the session to Diya. Diya, all yours.
Thanks so much, Rahul. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Just a second. All right. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for showing up. I'm going to take a second and thank SSI for this opportunity, because I brushed up on my elasmobranch basics after a very long time. So that was really nice. So this is, I think, if I had to sum up the work that I've been doing for the last 3 years in 2 photos, this would be it. So my equipment dives a lot more than I do, and I sort of just sit around on the boat waiting for the cameras to stop recording. So while this is going under the water, sometimes like really underneath the boat, this is happening on top of the boat. So it's not extremely glamorous work. We work from early in the morning to late in the evening, and there's a lot of rotten fish smell involved. But yeah, it's extremely fulfilling to then come back and be able to see videos like you're seeing right now. So I thought we'd start off with a pop quiz just for fun, just to get a start just thinking on these animals that I'm going to talk about. So question 1, how long do you think sharks have been around? Do you think it's longer than this film that I have a huge problem with? Do you think they've been around for longer than our earliest ancestors? Or do you think that maybe they've been around longer than dinosaurs? Okay, so I'm going to show you 2 images, and you have to think about what these 2 have in common. You cannot Google this. So that's a close-up of shark skin, and those are human teeth. Where do you think sharks and rays are found? In coral reefs? In the deep sea, so in the bottom of the ocean? Or maybe in rivers? this one is quite fun. How do sharks and rays find food? This is rife with mythology. Do they see them? Can they smell them out? Or you don't really care until nobody's coming looking for you? And the last question, do they always sit on top? And by sitting on top, I mean sitting on top of the food web. This is a depiction of what an ecosystem conventionally is thought to look like. So we consider that all animals exist in a hierarchy. Well, all organisms exist in a hierarchy of who eats whom. So you have the sun that produces these what are called primary producers. So grass, for example, is a primary producer that then supports a population of first order predators, then intermediate predators, and then top predators. And a lot of the times, sharks are considered to sit on top of that food chain, and which gives them the wrongful reputation of a bloodthirsty carnivore. Which brings us to 5th of August 2015, when I saw my first shark alive. And yes, it was a hammerhead, and I possibly died of happiness in this very moment. And this is what shark interactions look like in the wild. You respect the shark's space. You are in its territory. You always remember that. And yeah, like, this animal did not even care that we were there. It was just swimming by. We happened to be on a boat in the water, and somebody said that this shark was around, and we went for it. And then, yeah. Here's another video that is also work related. This happened in 2018. We just finished tagging some blue sharks of this boat that you can see here. And this friend of mine, Catherine, she was the one who was tagging the sharks, and she was so stressed that the minute she managed to successfully tag a shark, she was like, okay, I'm going to go in with and swim with them before they go away. And this happened. The shark came ridiculously close to her, but see, it's completely harmless. It's not threatening. It's curious. They're like, these blue sharks are like dogs. They will come, they will check you out, and they'll say that you're not competition, you're not interesting, and then they leave. So we've been historically fascinated by these species, and it makes sense. Like, we're also fascinated by tigers because of their charismatic animals. And this fascination goes way back before 1975 when Jaws came out. This particular image that you see here is an image from the people who live on islands between Papua New Guinea and Australia. And this is a constellation. It's a shark constellation called the Bidem. And this apparently also involves the Western constellation, the Big Dipper. And yeah, they used this. When the Bidem appeared in the sky, they used it as an indication of changing the crop cycle. Similarly, here you have a mural from an ancient Peruvian pyramid. And if you can see, these here are manta rays. They're stylized manta rays that were considered sacred. They were divine. And this was found entombed in what was possibly an old temple. Similarly, we've also had, we also explain a lot of ecological characteristics that we see in the environment, and that is a lot of the times related to mythology. So this here is also from Australia, and this image here of a shark is supposed to be a depiction of what is called a whaler shark. And this one here is the Marna, which is deity. It's an ancestor. And the story goes that the deity was resting on the beach when someone attacked it. And then in its fury, it ate its way inland. And while it was jumping its way through the land, its teeth were falling out and then formed the trees that line the riverbank. So that's very interesting because these species actually are estuarine, and they can be found slightly upriver, and they have this tendency to be violent. So this mythology both explains their habitat and also their habits, their behavior. Similarly, here you will see this is an image of what is called a sawfish. It has this extremely distinct bill, as you were. It's not a bill, it's called a rostrum, which has teeth, spiky teeth from it. This is also a species that's found sometimes in shallow water, sometimes in estuaries. And the story behind this painting is that this, again, it's a sacred deity, dug its way through the land and went to the river mouth and was followed by these 3 stingray who were also sacred deities. So yeah, so that's something to think about. So the people who have hazarded a guess, the confirmed verified ancestor of elasmobranch, so sharks, rays, and other cartilaginous fishes, is supposed to appear about 420 million years ago, which is longer than the dinosaurs. So this image here that you see on your right are pictures of very, very zoomed in, magnified pictures of scales that they have found that they believe belong to this species called Elegestolepis grossi. And keep in mind this distinct structure of the scale, and I'll tell you later in the talk why this is without a doubt a cartilaginous fish. So this is a very simplified version of the tree of life. And as you can see here, the rays and sharks are pretty there down at the bottom. So they're supposed to be the oldest jawed vertebrates around. And I'm not going to open the can of worms that is their evolutionary history, but it is considered that they probably shared some common ancestors. Although if you go deep into the literature, there are people who think that they are not what is called a monophyletic group and did not arise from the same species. So the oldest extant sharks, that is the still living sharks that we have, appeared around 190 million years ago in the fossil record. So they belong to the family Hexanchidae, which are the cow sharks. Cow sharks are extremely typical because they have, so normally you will see sharks and rays have 5 gill slits, and cow sharks will have 6 or 7. And the oldest still living rays come from the family of guitar fishes, and they are said to have appeared about 150 million years ago. Although there were other species of this family that are supposed to be older than this, but have since gone extinct. So what is a shark or a ray anyway, right? Like what is it that I'm even talking about? Sharks and rays come under the subclass of Elasmobranchia, which is, elasmos stands for beaten metal and branchia is gill. So they have these extremely typical gill slits that look like this from the inside. This is an internal view of what the gills look like inside the body of a shark. And you can see these are the very fine lamellae that are covered in blood vessels to facilitate the exchange of gases. So this is how they respire. And this is extremely different from what fish gills look like. Fish gills are always covered by this bony structure called operculum. So in comparison, elasmobranch gills are they're outside. But all of that, there's a lot of other characteristics that that define what is an elasmobranch. But for me, what is the most defining, which I think is very characteristic, is that the fact that they're essentially covered in teeth. If you ever see a shark or a ray, or if you touch it underwater, be careful of who it is that you touch, which species. But if you do feel its skin, it has it's extremely interesting texture. It's sandpapery, but if you touch in one way, if you're going with the direction of these scales, then it's very smooth. But if you caress it the other way, then you can actually scratch yourself pretty bad. So their skin is made of something called placoid scales. And placoid scales are extremely interesting because they are the precursors of human teeth. So they have essentially the same internal structure. As you can see, there's an enamel, there is this thing called a dentin, and then you have a pulp cavity and these root, these canals. So So yeah, so these placoid scales are actually what brought the human tooth about. And there is an amazing diversity of these scales in the class of Elastobranchia by itself. All of these magnifications of the scales that you see here come from the same scale, so they're all like 500 micrometer. This one, and it's very interesting because you can tell a lot about the life history or the way the animal lives or where it lives, looking at just this close-up of its skin. You can see here, this is an angel shark. Angel sharks normally live on the bottom. They're very slow. Its scales are large, rough. The surface area doesn't really matter. This is a gulper shark. It's a deep sea species, also again, very slow. As you can see, the scales are large and not really, not really very close together. Whereas here, you have these two sharks that are open ocean pelagic, quite fast in their swimming speed, and see how their scales are they're so small and they're so closely packed together. We'll come back to this in later in the talk. But yeah, it's amazing the diversity that they have. So they've been around for almost 400 million years, and that has given them enough time to adapt to almost all habitats possible. So other than this hadal zone, sharks are found in each zone of the ocean. And who knows, once we go and discover one, it's possible that you find some weird form species of elastobranchs here deep in the trenches as well. So they're present on the continental shelf. This is a reef shark that's present in reefs. You have the oceanic manta that's present in the pelagic zone. Then you have these deep sea species that are found. This fine-spined skate here is found up to 3,200 meters deep. That's very deep. That's 3 kilometers deep. This one here is possibly the deepest elastobranch that goes up to almost 4,000 meters deep. So yeah, they're everywhere. And even in our rivers, there are sharks that are strictly freshwater. There are sharks that have tolerance to less salinity, but then there are also sharks like this Ganges shark here that live exclusively in the river Ganges and Ganga, and also utilize this estuarine habitat. And this species is possibly one of the most rare species on the planet, because there's like 3 museum specimens of it in the whole world. And yeah, there's very little known about this shark, but there you have it. So not just are they found in all habitats, they also have these crazy dive profiles where you see this devil ray, which is normally what is called an epipelagic organism. So it sticks around in the top surface of the ocean. It's capable of diving to almost 2,000 meters deep. And they do these very rapid dives. The thresher shark, for example, is a species that does diel vertical migration, which is it spends its days in a deeper level of the water and spends its nights. It comes up. And a lot of sharks do that. And a lot of the pelagic sharks will indulge in crazy deep dives, like they just go poof, like bullets. So you wonder how they're able to do that. And that's because sharks and rays have large oil-filled livers. That should be livers. Okay, I'm sorry, that's fine. So yeah, so this particular species that you're seeing all gory and cut up here was a 25-kilo animal that had come up in our landing center, and we cut it up to find out what's happening. And just the liver alone, these 2 lobes that you see here, so this is lobe 1 and this is lobe 2, were 5 kilograms. That's 1/5 of the weight of this shark. So the fun thing about having oil-filled livers is that you can dive as fast as you want, you can come up as fast as you want, and there is no problem because there is no problem of air expanding or contracting. It's just oil and fats are quite resistant to compression and expansion. And it avoids this, which is what happens to all bony fish, which is that they have these air bladders that you can see here. So the air bladder works very similar to a BCD. And if this fish comes up very fast, then its air bladder will expand and it sort of like comes out of its mouth like that. It looks a little bit like a balloon. So this, again, adaptation, need for speed. This is a short fin mako shark. This shark is the fastest shark in the oceans. It can swim up to 60 kilometers per hour. 60 kilometers per hour in the water. Do you realize how fast that is? I don't know what Phelps' speed is, but if somebody can tell me, that'd be awesome. And the mako shark feeds on tuna and marlin. So these are also fish that are very rapid. They swim very rapidly. So how did it become like the fastest shark in the ocean? I'm gonna share a very quick video just for you to see the way it swims. Look at that, it's amazing. This was also on cameras that we'd found off one of the islands in the Azores. But yeah, look, this shark is covered in these very specialized form of scales. It's the same, it comes back to the scales. The placoid scales on this animal are extremely, they overlap each other in a way to reduce the maximum possible amount of drag. Drag is friction that you have against a surface and a liquid. And these scales are designed in a way by evolution that it reduces the amount of turbulence that is created by the water on its body. So if you look at this shape here, it's very reminiscent of the racing cars. If you look up an image of a racing car and you look at this, it's actually really similar. It has this winged keel that like cuts through the medium that it's going through, and then yeah, reduces the amount of drag. And then of course the tail. The tail is an extremely important characteristic of any shark or ray. Well, the rays don't have tails, but yeah, it tells you a lot about how the animal lives. So the mako shark has this, what is called a lunate homocircle tail. So the top lobe and the bottom lobe are more or less the same size, which gives them propulsion for speed. And then you have this nurse shark who has a very well developed top lobe, upper lobe, but not so much of lower lobe. And this is characteristic of sharks that live on the bottom. So they feed off the bottom, they swim off the bottom, they're very slow, they take it easy. Tiger sharks are also cruisers. I don't know of them of being very fast swimmers, but somebody can correct me on that. Cookie cutter shark is an interesting deep sea species that's very small and very naughty. And yeah, it just has this like malformed tail. It doesn't swim very fast. It lives like in the bottom of the ocean. And then that brings us to the thresher shark, which has the most interesting tail, at least for me, of all the elasmobranchs, because it has this gigantic upper lobe that can be larger than the actual body size of the animal. So if you, from here to the snout, can be smaller than this upper lobe. And the thresher shark actually uses this. It has been found to hunt. So they do something called stunning of prey. They tail slap their, so within a bait ball, they tail slap using this to stun their prey and then feed on it. How cool is that? And of course, one of the things that we must always be aware of when we're running is we run out of breath. And these pelagic torpedoes have what is called ram ventilation. So they can just swim with their mouth open, and the amount of water that goes through the gills is going to oxygenate them, quote unquote, automatically. But this is not archetypical for elasmobranchs, because you also have the easygoing lifestyle of the rays and the other sharks that live off the bottom. So this in particular, the common stingray, I'm not saying that it's the slowest elasmobranch there is, but I just had a really cool picture of it. They have flattened bodies, so they move by undulating the rim of their wings, of their flaps. And they have something very interesting called spiracles. So this is a modified first gill And this allows the sharks and rays that live off the bottom, that live on the bottom or are sedentary, like most rays tend to be, it helps them breathe through their mouth. So they do something called buccal pumping, where they will force water through their mouths and it exits the spiracle, and this way they're breathing. So yeah, so these animals are incredibly evolved and incredibly adapted to the point that the same individual can have different adaptations of its skin type at different parts of its body. So each of this A to I corresponds to 1 to 9. I didn't get a picture for 10, but yeah, corresponds to, so you can see how different each of these panels are, and the fact that A comes from its snout, whereas, where do we see E, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This comes from here somewhere. They just look so different. And it's all of this is evolved to make this animal move better in the water. And which brings us to how they hunt. And you know what? There's no one answer. The sensory systems of each species is very well adapted. Again, adapted to its habitat. This is an image of a deep sea species called the bird-beaked dogfish, and they live around 1,500 meters deep, and you can see how large their eyes are. They're huge, which makes sense because where they live, there's almost no light. So to maximize the amount of light that enters their eyes, this is their adaptation. Similarly, you have the Greenland shark, which is a gigantic, very slow-moving creature that lives in the Arctic seas, the polar seas. And you can see this thread here. It's actually a parasite. So these species move so slowly that their eyes are inevitably infested by parasites. And a study that came out in 2019 says that these species have evolved in their brain to have very highly developed what is called an olfactory lobe. So their smelling senses are much more developed, and you can see that in their brains than, for instance, the part of the brain that controls their vision. The part of the brain that controls this vision, which is the optic part, the otic something, I'm sorry, is very reduced, whereas the part that controls smelling is more, I think, it's the authors say that it's more developed than any other shark brain that has been investigated so far. So yeah, and then this is my favorite sensory system, which is their sensitivity to electricity. And this is, you see, if you, all sharks will have this mostly. You flip it around, and on its nose, well, these are the nostrils, you will see these tiny, 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 tiny pinpricks. It looks like somebody's just like gone to town with a needle on its nose. But these are actually openings to canals called the ampullae of Lorenzini, which I have very nicely forgotten to write down. But yes, it's called the ampullae of Lorenzini. And the ampullae of Lorenzini are these specialized cells that are filled with jelly. And this jelly is filled with ions, and ions have charge. And here in the bottom, you have receptor cells that are sensitive to changes in polarity. So that's the positive, negative inside this gel-filled canal. And then these receptor cells are attached to the brain via neurons. So neurons are specialized cells that connect things to your brain. So yeah, so if there is an animal, and it could be any animal, just here, because we produce electricity, all animals produce electricity. I'm producing electricity at this point, and so are you. And our very weak electric fields that has been produced by our bodies when they come here close to the opening of this cell, it immediately creates a potential within this cell. So all of the charged ions are going to like align until that electric potential reaches the receptor cells and goes directly to the brain. So this shark in particular that, well, I call it torque shark, but it has a lot of names. This is a bottom feeding and shark. So it uses this wide range of ampullae lorenzini that is present on its snout to pick up electric signals of prey that may be buried in the sand. Another species that does this, that we are all very familiar with, are hammerheads. So hammerheads are said to feed on stingrays, and stingrays can bury themselves in the sand in an attempt to hide themselves. But the hammerheads, with their very wide, it's like a sensor. Their hammer is a sensor. It has, and it's full of these ampullae of lorenzini, and it helps them both detect, and then they use their hammer to like hold these sharp, hold the stingrays down and feed on them. But another thing that the ampullae of lorenzini are very good for, especially in pelagic sharks, as you can see here, this is a photo of a great white, and the great white has it on both sides. So it's like, it has it on top and at the bottom of its snout. It is to exactly locate the prey while it's feeding on it. So this is a cartoon version of the sequence of a great white taking a bite. And you can see that the eyes are so if the prey is here, you can't really tell very well where it is. So it's essentially trying to, imagine you had, your nose was huge and you were trying to eat a small, I don't know, a golgappa. And then you wouldn't exactly know where to put it because you can't see your mouth. So these ampullae of lorenzini in that way help these sharks to sort of orient themselves to actually be able to chomp down on the prey. And that's very cool. So that brings us to what these bloodthirsty
Diya,
carnivores.
hi, Siddharth
Yeah?
here.
Hi.
Sorry. Would
Hi.
you mind taking the questions which are on the Q&A window now?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, fine. This is a good break. I am going to talk about, okay, so how does salinity of water affect sharks? Sharks osmoregulate using something called urea. So I'm not exactly, should I type the answer down? Siddharth, I'm sorry.
No, just say it. No,
Okay,
address
all
it
right,
live
yeah.
on the webinar. Yeah.
So some sharks have, so that's why, I mean, I don't know if any of you have ever smelled a cut shark. It smells rank, it's horrible. And that's because of all the urea that they have in their muscles. And that urea that they have through their skin helps them in osmoregulation. And there are some species that are more adept at being able to osmoregulate in less than salty seawater, which is in estuaries and stuff. Others are not. I don't know if I answered your question. I cannot tell you how freshwater elasmobranchs osmoregulate. Maybe it's something that you should go and check out. Bull sharks are not found in freshwater, but they are found in estuaries. So estuaries have like slightly lower salinity than your rivers. And yes, there are bull sharks even in Ganga. There are reports of bull sharks, but bull sharks also go to sea, so they would not be strictly freshwater. Cool. Yes, you can hypnotize a shark by touching on their nose. So the shark hypnosis is called tonic immobility, which is an extremely useful physiological reaction that they have because it helps us scientists be able to work with them. And I will show you a few examples of how exactly we manipulate sharks while having put them in tonic. And well, we believe, I don't exactly know if this is true, but we do believe that if you are holding a shark in tonic and you like gently rub its snout, then it sort of goes into tonic faster. Although I'm not so sure that there is actual science on that. Are all sharks nocturnal? What should we do in the night? Okay, so I'm going to take some of these answers later. How much does a shark approximately weigh? That is a question, because do you know that the smallest shark on this planet is 15 centimeters long. So I think they could, and the largest is 20 meters. So yeah, there is a huge variety there of how much a shark can approximately weigh. So, okay, is that good?
Yeah, that's good. If you want to answer the rest of the questions later, no problem.
Why doesn't it happen to other fish mammals touch the shark? Okay, I'm sorry. Anu Jakat, I did not understand your question. But yeah, okay. So I will. Does the skin texture change according to how fast or slow the shark is? Yes. That's how the size of the placoid scales influence their, they influence their speed. So if you want me to go back very quickly to that slide, this one that I used, the picture that I used here is on purpose because this is a very slow, so this one, these scales are huge. This is not from a scanning electron micrograph. This is just a general photo that I took and then zoomed in. And I could do that because this species is a deep sea species and it's quite slow. And it has these large scales. So this one, this is that species. This is what its scales look like close up. So yeah, you can definitely tell that there is a difference in the scale size and therefore a difference in skin texture. These the sharks that are found in the pelagic are much smoother than the ones that you would find in the deep sea. So I'm going to, yeah, all right. Wow, okay. Friends, I'm gonna come back to the rest of these questions later because I think that I will seriously overshoot my time. If that's okay with everybody. If you can just hang on, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I'm quite interesting so far, so no stress.
Thanks, yeah. So what do you do when you reach the top? You have been around for 400 million years. You have adapted and evolved, and you are the best form, like you are the best you can be. And so this is, again, we are coming back to the pyramid. This is what's called a trophic pyramid. So it's a pyramid of food. And as you can see here, if you simplify this into a chain reaction, because it's never as simple in the real world, but if I just take like your main players from this web and we put it in a chain, you have the producer. So in a way of really dumbing it down, this is grass. Then you have the primary consumer. So you would have like deer. And then you have a bunch of secondary and tertiary and whatever ultimate consumers that are feeding off of this primary consumer base. So if I remove the big guy on top, what happens is that the control that the big guy on top has over the smaller guy is also eliminated. So the tertiary consumer, so it's basically like a lower level consumer, will increase in number, which then will increase the pressure on the trophic level below that. So the level of food that is available below that. And because this control is then gone on the level below that, that will increase, and then which will then increase the pressure on our
Diya, you have dropped out there once you were at the. Hello, can you hear me? Diya, you seem to have your connection is not coming through.
So this is an ecosystem food web. You also have bought.
Hi, Diya.
Hi. Yeah, hello. I can hear you though.
Yeah, what you kind of dropped out from the primary consumer point. So if you mind repeating that.
I will. Let me. Okay, I think that was a blip in the internet. Primary consumer. So way in the beginning of this. Do I go back to the beginning of this slide?
No, not at the beginning. You can start off
Okay.
you can start off from the tertiary consumer or secondary consumer.
Okay, yeah, so basically, like the animals that are feeding on animals have a control that they exert on the whole ecosystem, because all of the entire world exists in delicate balance, as we learn a lot in biology. And once you start messing up with that, all of this will go haywire, and in the end of the day, we will not have enough grass, which is what is supporting the whole ecosystem, as you can see here. So these are direct ways that shark populations shape ecosystems. But there are also, it's kind of boring because it's kind of straightforward and you can sort of always see it. Not always, but yeah. But there are much more interesting indirect effects of shark populations and their role as top predators. One of which is this: how do tiger sharks help in making good seagrass meadows? And this was research that was done in Australia on the sand flats. I want to say northwest, but I'm not sure. Anyway, the point is these tiger sharks were seen to influence the quality of the seagrass meadows in this area. And these researchers went out and they did some sightings of sharks and of their favorite prey, the sea turtles. And what they found was that when these tiger sharks were in the area, so these tiger sharks they're oceanic, right? They use like the whole ocean to move around and feed in. And when they come in to these seagrass meadows, your green turtles will move away from good productive sites. So the tiger shark is coming into like a nice, productive, lush green seagrass meadow, because obviously that means that there is a greater number of turtles there, right? Because of what we just learned about trophic food chains. And so these tiger sharks are moving into these nice, let's say like the good real estate. And these turtles, in a way to avoid predation, will move to the worse off areas of the seagrass meadows. So, the seagrass where it's like they're old and they're fraying and the grass isn't good. Basically, the grass is not good on the other side. And so they're going there and they're feeding on them. And this type of herbivory is extremely important in seagrass meadows. So this enables the seagrass meadows to renew themselves. The old leaf blades will be chopped up, and you will have new leaf blades coming up on that side. So this is how your tiger sharks are sort of landscaping, if you will. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that example of how wolves change the course of the rivers in Yellowstone National Park. So that, for me, this is it's almost like a direct analogy in the marine ecosystem. And shark poop acts as fodder. Who would have thunk? So this is a picture of an extremely healthy reef, which means that it has a very large number of sharks. So we're going to take the pyramid that we have just studied and we're going to turn it up on its head, because some researchers say that in pristine, undisturbed coral reef environments, the pyramid is actually the other way down, because these habitats and these ecosystems are able to support a really large number of predator species, and hence their biomass, so their joint weight is a lot more than the biomass of producers. So if you had to take all of the algae that was in this area and you had to take the weight of all of the sharks would win. And what happens because of that is that this particular study that I'm talking about was in the Palmyra Atoll in the Pacific Ocean, and they studied that gray reef sharks, the same ones that we were talking about a little while ago, bring up to little less than 100 kilos of nitrogen to the reef ecosystem every day. And nitrogen is an extremely important nutrient to grow plants, essentially. So this input of nutrients is coming from shark poop. And this shark poop is then contributing to a more healthy reef ecosystem. So there's a lot of other ways that these top predators are controlling the habitat that they're present in. And they have very interesting behaviors that is a kind of more the focus of what I study. But I love shark behavior. So one of the things that is you would not like off the bat just be like, okay, because you see this image of, like this lone shark that's like roving the oceans looking for its next prey. But a lot of the species are very social. They love hanging out in groups. Aggregations are just everywhere. And a very interesting thing about these aggregations are they're actually very segregated. So they can be sex segregated. So you will have females will hang out in their own groups and the males are like doing their own thing. And this has an interesting evolutionary story to it, is that shark mating is extremely violent. So if you've ever seen that video that was floating around the internet a while back, you'll see that females get chased by males, they get bitten. So the way the mating actually happens is that the male will literally bite down on the female and inseminate her, which is also why biologically a lot of female elasmobranchs have thicker skin, which is not an advice I would give to any girl out there, but there we go. Yeah, and they essentially avoid male interaction unless absolutely necessary. There's also segregation that happens according to size, because sharks have no qualms and they will definitely eat shark pups. So a lot of the times, smaller individuals will be found in completely different ecosystems than larger individuals. And they move across ocean basins. And this particular example is actually some work that we like the group I'm associated with in the Azores did. They put a satellite tag on this ray, which is called the Chilean devil ray. And it set off from up here. So this is like the center of the North Atlantic. And it just sort of made its way down to almost the equator and came right back up. So when this result came in, we were all completely psyched. We were like, wow, what a beautiful image. But I think more than that, we were all like, but why? Because it's such a cliche for research, but it's actually true. The more you find out, the more questions keep popping up. So yeah, this is, and you sort of look at its trajectory and you see that it doesn't like wander. It sort of goes in a good straight line, like it knows where it's going. And another unanswered question there is that we don't actually know how these guys orient themselves. The ocean is huge and it's mostly featureless. So yeah, if anybody is out there is looking for a research topic. But they also hang out in extremely localized habitat patches, which is again a very useful behavior that they have. So this is again work that we've done in the Azores, and we tagged a bunch of hammerhead sharks with acoustic tags. So essentially imagine that it's like putting the bell on the cat, and then you put a bunch of listening stations across your the study area, and every time the bell tinkles close to a listening station, you have a detection. So this island is about 42 kilometers, I think, lengthwise. It's tiny, and yet you see that they are very specific about where they want to hang out. So you have this white is a positive detection, and the grays are negative detections, or just absences. Nothing called a negative detection. And yeah, so this part of the coast seems to be a favorite, and they're also like a little bit of this part of the coast, whereas this not so much. So again, this sort of research throws up more questions than it actually answers, and all of these interesting behavior idiosyncrasies come together And this is sort of the sort of questions that I'm looking at. This is footage from one particular site in one of the islands. These are babies of the taupe shark that you have seen earlier. And this is not a good picture of it because I couldn't find the video, but there was a swarm of these babies around this camera. There were, at some point, we counted like 20. And that's not very common for the kind of environment that the Azores is. They're temperate seas, they're not very diverse, etc. And the most interesting part was that where we did this drop of the camera, the next drop, which was about 500 meters away, did not have the same number of animals. In fact, I think I didn't have any animals. So this was an extremely localized occurrence of an aggregation of baby sharks. And this species is of interest because one, it is fished, and two, I actually think it's not present in the Indian Ocean, but I could be wrong about this. But at least in the North Atlantic, this is it's fished a lot by all countries that are in Europe, and it's supposed to have one single population in all of North Atlantic. So you want to sort of be able to find out where the nurseries are, like where the baby sharks are hanging out, to be able to protect these areas and hence contribute to the conservation of the species. So, like a segue into what are the few things that you can do if you were a shark biologist. So this is my work. I stalk sharks. I put cameras in the water and I stick a little bit of fish on one end and I leave them to film. And every once in a while, we have these amazing captures of sharks in such quote unquote high numbers, because a lot of the footage, a lot of the time is just looking into blue and nothing exciting happens. So this is a high point in the life of a BRUVS ecologist. We also indulge in shark surgeries. So this is the putting the bell on the cat that I was talking to you a little while ago. So I'm so sorry. This is an experiment that we did last year where we went out fishing for these taupe sharks, the babies that I showed you before, and we put in these acoustic tags on them, so the bell. And this is sort of what it looks like. It's literally surgery, because you notice the shark is on its back, so it has gone into tonic. We put flowing seawater into its mouth, so that's to help with its respiring. And then that's my boss, will make a small nick here where the abdominal cavity is, being very careful not to cut any of the vital organs, and then we'll stick in a receiver about, I don't know, 4 centimeters long into there and stitch it back up. And that will then give us location from this individual for the next 5 years. So these batteries were supposed to last 5 years. We also, in that group, did something called non-invasive tagging. So what you saw right now is obviously extremely invasive, because you're literally like sticking something into its body. So the other thing that we do is tag sharks externally. So this is an elastic band that will go around. Imagine what would be the shoulders of the shark. And the white thing that you see here is the frame that we use to hold the elastic band in the shape that the shark can enter. And then you see this very thin line. I don't know if you guys can see it, but this very thin line then attaches to the tag package. And it's sort of this torpedo-shaped thing of styrofoam that holds a lot of sensors. And this is from that same time that you saw the blue shark video from, when we tagged this animal, and it was hilarious and slightly panic at the same time, because 2 sharks wanted to come and be tagged at the same time because they were attracted to the tuna head that you see here. So yeah, the external tagging is not as easy when they're not gone into tonic immobility. Yeah, so this is the sort of questions that you can answer with the tools that I'm talking about. This is also from our group on a seamount. So seamounts are mountains under the sea, actually, very, very easily explained there. And this one particular seamount called Princess Alice has yearly annual aggregations of these Chilean devil rays that come there every year without fail in August and September. They're there in November, December, they disappear. And nobody knows exactly what they're doing there. So of the multiple hypotheses that are floating around in our group, one is maybe they're here to feed, maybe they're here to mate, maybe they're resting in, they're doing a long migration. We don't know because there are so many unanswered questions about these animals. So one of the things that people in our group are involved in is the external, so this particular one is externally tagging Mobula rays. And these are short deployment tags, which means that they only stay on the animal for say like half a day to a day. And the best thing about these tags is they have a camera. So you're able to film what the animal is seeing, which is just next level. And so yeah, and then because it's a short deployment, short time deployment, you can go and pick up the tag from wherever the animal has released it. So I'm just going to share with you this video that was because BBC came around and was like, what? We want to be in on the action. And yeah, I'll just let you see that. So essentially, this is that aggregation that we're talking about. And we don't know what its purpose is. And then we put these camera tags on these animals. And we found in the footage that a lot of the individuals were actually are actually pregnant. So you see this round thing here, that's not normal for this Mobula. So yeah, so then they found that, so yeah, so they saw that a lot of these individuals that they saw in this aggregation are actually pregnant females. Here you see here, and then you will see, yeah, here as well. And then we filmed something that has, as the BBC people say, never been filmed before, which is the image, well, the footage of a ray baby kicking inside the uterus of the mother. And yeah, this was huge. This was like, that's amazing. And that is possibly one of the reasons why that they're here, because nobody actually knows where these rays go to pup. So pupping is when they deliver their young. And maybe it's possible that they're doing it here, but we, as far as I know, have never seen a small-sized individual of this species on that seamount. So maybe they're just migrating through and they're stopping here to rest and fuel up. But yeah. Nobody can get over this. So I think that officially brings me to the end of this presentation.
Yes.
Yeah,
There are a lot of questions for you to answer, so you can take them one by one.
Oh my God. Volunteering opportunities for people to work on these long-term projects. Yes, absolutely. So I will be completely honest, I'm not very clued into the scene in India, even though I know that you can volunteer with a lot of organizations that are working here as well. But yes, long-term research projects are always looking for volunteers. Like the BRUVS project that I was on, we always had like volunteers come in the summer to do whatever their master thesis or just like take a break, and because there's a lot of grunt work, and yeah, like go for it if that's definitely something that you should look into. Does massaging their nose overwhelm the ampullae of Lorenzini? I guess it's just like sensory overload. Like they don't exactly go to sleep. It's more like a kind of hypnosis. They take a little bit of time to actually come back as well. But yeah, I think that's possibly why that's happening. So no, the tonic immobility is literally when you turn it upside down. So you can turn it upside down and not touch its face. And it will still go into tonic. And all species do that across the board. Sharks will do it, rays will do it, they'll all do it. Feeding sharks and rays. I am personally against that. I think hand feeding is complicated, it's problematic, it's not something, they're not dogs, don't do it. Chummed dives, I mean, so the first video that I showed you of that hammerhead shark, that happened out of the blue. And the other one that I showed you did not. So that was, we had gone out to do research, and because this was research that was connected to the tourism industry, we were chumming for sharks as well. I'm not sure, man. Like, I guess their behavior doesn't actually change. The research shows that when you chum for sharks, they will come around, they will see if something's available, they don't get violent, provided that you are diving away from what is called the smell trail. So like, don't be in the line of chum, be somewhere else, which is what a lot of diving companies do, at least in the Azores. They have a boat that's chumming like much further than where the divers are. So it's literally just to attract them. And then the divers get in the water and see them. So they will not associate divers with food, if that's like the question. And so, yeah, I think chumming can be done responsibly, in which that it does not affect either the animal or the diver. But you cannot be like wanton about it. Ampullae of Lorenzini, undersea cables affecting sharks and their hunting habits. Is it possible that undersea cables are increasing the presence of sharks due to them picking up electromagnetic signals? No, I have not seen any research saying that they're aggregating around these undersea cables. And in fact, that's also something that I'm looking into. Like, I cannot give you a bulletproof answer. It is one of the things that goes into this research that is done before you make any modifications to natural habitats, which is called an environmental impact assessment. And definitely when they look to put in new undersea cables, one of the things that is considered is the effect it will have on these animals that are so sensitive to electricity. I'm personally not aware of any research showing that has changed their movement or ecology, but again, that's a question that you can definitely look into. So the oxygen percent in the air would reduce if the sharks are fished out. I'm not what? No. Okay. So I'm not Sanjana, I'm not personally aware of this research, but I do know that they say that the compression of the oxygen-rich zone in the epipelagic, so the top layer of the ocean, which is supposed to be the most oxygenated, that is supposed to be decreasing because of climate change, which does decrease the amount of vertical habitat that is available for fast swimming sharks like your mako shark and your great whites. And so that's like an added, I have read some research on that, like that, and how that is an added pressure to these sharks that are already facing the brunt of fishing. Mating habits of whale sharks. Oh, wow. Where are you from, Dhruv Sirohi? I want to see this. But do you mean personally you encounter them or, okay. Dude, whale sharks, nobody knows. Nobody knows where they're mating. Nobody knows where they're giving birth. People have just seen babies in one place and seen like larger whale sharks in another place. But there is a theory that's floating around that they give birth in like really deep in the ocean. Yeah, that's what you have heard people say is actually true. But yeah, this has not been, there's no empirical evidence to support this, let's just say. Shark breeds being nocturnal. Not all of them. If you see a shark on a night dive, look at it, keep safe distance, don't try to go and touch it. I'm sure like these guys from SSI, the other panelists, are a lot more experienced in this than I am, because as I told you, I don't dive so much. But I think, yeah, the rule of thumb is like, keep your distance, give respect, and they should be fine. Do you guys want to weigh in here?
Sorry, I'm going to weigh in here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, during night dives, it's, I don't know, I have never personally come across sharks. And as a general rule of thumb, when you are diving, you do not touch anything when you are underwater. Irrespective of whether it's a shark, a snake, a turtle, a parrotfish sleeping in its bubble, you look, you observe from a distance, you let them do what they're doing, and you go away from their path. I hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, 100%. I have to like agree with her. When I say that I was touching sharks, it was for when we were doing fishery, like our fishing experiments. So don't touch a shark when it's in the water. Don't do it. Shark protection program. You mean us protecting the sharks or sharks being protected from us? Sanjay?
Sharks being protected from us.
Okay. That's, I still don't understand your question. They have done horrible things in the name of what? Wait, hold on. Sorry. So that, shark being protected from us being like us protecting sharks, right?
Yeah. As in,
okay.
What is happening with shark protection programs that have been launched? Conservation, yeah.
Correct. Conservation programs. There are many, but mostly a lot of conservation tries to focus on fishing. So you have, because the real problem is there, right? The real problem is in these very slow growing, very late maturing, these like individuals who have an extremely relaxed life history strategy because they're apex predators being fished out. So a lot of the stuff that happens that really needs to happen has to happen on a policy level. So you have to intervene in the stages where you make your fisheries quote unquote shark friendly. And that is definitely something that a lot of people are trying to put in research too. In terms of conservation, the one thing that happens across the board is the construction of protected areas. So these are static areas in the sea that you identify as being important for your species of interest. So a lot of the work that I've been involved in has been sort of focused on that. So the BRUVS, for example, is an excellent conduit towards that end, where you find areas within your, wherever it is. It could be like the entire coast of India. It could be like a tiny place of like one fishing village where you see that, okay, like this place seems to be used by sharks much more than the places around it. And it could also be a place where something important is happening, like a nursery, or they're pupping, or they come here to mate, or they're coming here to feed. And the good news for us is a lot of this behavior is sort of, it's reliable, it's predictable. So if they're doing it there, you study it for a few years and you will see that they continue to do it there. So sharks are like sort of slaves to their habits, you can say. So yes, so you can have protection of these areas where you like sort of close it off for any extractive activities. And yeah, the other thing is legislation. There's legislation
Yeah,
needs to be
just
really,
like a
really
plug in
strong.
here.
Yeah.
Sanjay, if you have the chance, do check out the SSI Blue Oceans program. It's a free program. It's a conservation program. It has a specific chapter on shark finning and the numerous issues that they face, as well as why shark finning is considered one of the worst problems for the sharks. And it also gives you an idea of what all conservation programs are going on. There are specific examples and specific foundations that are focusing on shark conservation. That should help you out quite a bit to answer your question.
Cool. Thank you so much for that. What can one do to raise awareness about sharks? Yeah, no, does not. There's like what, 5 people killed by sharks every year. They have such a bad rep. Just don't propagate fear. I think is one of the most important things you can do. Tell people sharks and rays are fine. If anybody around you is being like, oh my God, you like want to go shark diving, you can like, dude, it's fine. They're fine. As long as you know how to respect them and you don't do anything stupid, they're not going to bother you. It's like tigers. It's literally like tigers. If you're not going to go and sit inside the tiger's mouth, the tiger's not going to do anything to you. It's not interested. So, I mean, the sharks harming humans, I don't know. It happens so rarely, and there are very few unprovoked attacks that actually happen. So a lot of the times, at least when I see a report of like a shark attack, I make it a point to go and find out exactly what happened. So like if there's a news report, you're like, you do a little bit of digging and you're like, but exactly what was that person doing? Like there are some things, some behaviors that you can adopt if you are going to swim infested waters, that is to reduce the likelihood of them taking interest in you. And there is something called an international shark attack file that's based out of Florida. It's they're doing research on this. So yeah, if you really want to find out about shark attacks and how to avoid them, they have a lot of information. But yes, raise awareness regarding sharks. Just tell everybody how sweet they are and how nice and how like cute they look. What is the fate of these tagged individuals? Are predated? Oh, so if you are, this doesn't happen in our research in particular because these the individuals that we're tagging have not gotten predated so far. They're sort of like the blues are the top predators in that ecosystem, and I mean, they could be, the baby topes could be getting predated upon, but that hasn't happened so far. But basically, you sort of stop hearing from that tag. So if it's that acoustic tag that I was showing you the video of, if it gets eaten, it's sort of like, if this fish stays around in the area, you might hear it. It won't get digested, so I guess it'll eventually get ejected from the body. For satellite sharks as well, if the shark dies or gets predated upon, you just stop hearing from it. So there's actually, tagging is slightly frustrating in that way because you put in a lot of time, you put in a lot of money, and your returns are quite low, which is why that the photo that I was showing you before from that Mobula ray, the Chilean devil ray, was like a really big deal because it was like, wow, we got so much data. It is. So this question is, sharks seem to be solitary and at the same time incredibly social. Have they managed to find a balance that we still struggle with? It is species specific, Mrigang. And also, sharks have no problems being social. They're like, if you have, for example, you're like, who's your favorite solitary hunter? The great white, right? They're happy to hang out in groups. Like, in fact, they will. So in areas where they come together to like do stuff like feeding and mating, they will be there in big groups. But big pelagic species tend to kind of disperse and be solitary in their like day-to-day lives. So I guess they're actually a lot like us. So when you're working, you're sort of like all by your lonesome, but come weekend, everybody's headed to the closest bar, right? Oh, thank you, Antonio. Miss you too. So the global lockdown and decreased sea traffic impact on shark and ray behavior. I'm sure it has made a tremendous impact. Well, tremendous maybe is a bit of an exaggeration, but we don't know because nobody's out there studying it right now, right? But it is, I think, at least for the group that I was associated with in FIAL, that is something that they want to do this year. Once they're able to go out to sea, see how, if at all, these species are moving around in different ways. But I mean, yeah, the decreased sea traffic is also, you have to consider fishing in it, and fishing, as far as I know, is opened. So I'm not actually sure how much of that would, I mean, globally, how much of that would make a difference. But again, Anuja, this is something that you should probably like snoop around and find out.
Diya, 1 second, I'm sorry.
Yeah?
There is a question
Yeah.
on the live Facebook stream about
Oof.
if whale sharks are sharks, then why are they called whale sharks?
Because they're really large.
Done. We'll put that across on
We're
Facebook.
very basic
Thanks.
like that.
Thanks.
We
Makes
see a
sense.
large fish and we're like, it's a whale. And then you're like, no, but it is shark. We're like, whale shark.
Excellent. We'll let them know. Thanks.
Thanks. Mentioned telemetric studies being conducted. Elaborate a bit further. Mrigang, it's actually this, what you have asked there is a very pertinent and a very deep, intense question. But we don't actually know how they are able to figure out navigation patterns, how they're able to navigate, sorry. There's a bunch of theories, but nothing has been proved beyond a shred of doubt. So I'm not familiar with these big cat navigation project. So I guess, I mean, dude, like, we can have this conversation over email if you would like, because yeah, you make some pertinent points, but this is definitely one of those open-ended questions that we still haven't been able to answer. Yeah. So Evan, your question about the BRUVS surveys being able to replace the more invasive sampling techniques, there has been a lot of there has been some research in Australia that has looked at how BRUVS could be more or less like give you exactly the same sort of samples as longline fishing will do. I guess it's a bit site specific, because I know that from where we work in FIAL, that's not possible. You get very, very few sightings on BRUVS surveys, and it's completely different if you do longline fishing. Tagging, so tagging is very fine scale, right? Like, you're talking about individuals here. BRUVS in that sense are extremely coarse scale. The data that they give you are like on a species level. And you would have to have exact, like, very specific markers on the animal, that something like on whale sharks, for example, you know how they use the pattern on the backs of whale sharks to be able to tell individuals. So something, yeah, like if I was doing a BRUVS survey in an area where whale sharks are very common, I would probably be able to tell you like individual movement patterns of these species. But yeah, I think like actual tagging it gives you over a very wide area of space that BRUVS do not, because BRUVS are extremely, like, they're fixed in that point, right? So I think it's getting there, though. I have heard of drifting BRUVS surveys where you sort of leave your cameras to drift in the ocean and stuff. But I think there's going to be a while before it's able to like replace something like tagging. Do we use a local anesthetic before inserting the tags? No, but we do use a disinfectant, because the anesthetic is the tonic immobility. Like they don't, so because you would see some reaction, right? Like if the shark was being the shark was feeling hurt and stuff, they normally don't react. They're very angry to be having put on the table, but once they go into tonic, they're like, nah, take it. Yes, Evan, I think they could. I am not familiar with the exact papers that have looked into this, but I'm sure somebody's looked into it. And yeah, there could be an effect of tiger shark populations with carbon dioxide levels in the ocean, in the atmosphere. But you would have to look at like how much, at which extent they are affecting the renewal of seagrass meadows. But again, definitely something that one should and could look into. When a fish touches its nose, oh, I'm sorry, no, tonic immobility doesn't happen because you touch its nose. Tonic immobility happens when you turn the shark on its back. So that is, that I think answers your question. Yeah, pregnant sharks are chill, I guess. I've never dived with a pregnant shark, but I don't think they're not like viciously protective of their young, if that's what you mean to say. Avanti, my hypothesis is a little bit out there, and I think it has to do with magnetic signatures on that part of the island. I have absolutely no proof to back that up, but I think it's more of something that I want to be true than anything else. We haven't actually looked into the exact why of the question, because that involves another round of exploration and different kinds of research and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely something, now that we've like started seeing this pattern, you also have to make sure that the pattern exists, right? Persists, sorry, not exists, persists. And yeah, definitely food, I'm not sure. There are ways that you can look for, and because it involves research on energy budgets of the animals and see if they're actually like eating better on that side of the island. Current patterns, I don't think so. But yeah, again, it's an unanswered question. Is it likely that sharks might begin to alter their breeding and feeding and migratory patterns because of water temperatures? Will we start spotting sharks in places we have not before? There is evidence, so like a lot of the research that happens on climate change and organisms that are affected by climate change does show that there is when the shift in temperature happens, there's also a shift in the habitat distribution of the species. So it has been documented for corals and I think for some fish. We have seen evidences of like what is called a shift in the range like the distribution range of a species. So like some species that like warmer waters will possibly like start pushing a little bit to the northern end of their distribution because the sea is getting warmer. So yes, it is very likely that you start spotting sharks in places you have not before. But I cannot off the top of my head give you an example of how that might alter their breeding and feeding. Migratory, yes. Breeding and feeding, I'm not 100% sure. That would also depend on what happens to the species that they're feeding on. Does that help? Cookie cutter sharks are naughty because there are these really tiny sharks that have an extremely interesting, like a jaw. So they're called cookie cutters because they sort of bite into the animal that they're, so they don't prey on animals because they're tiny, right? They just like bite out chunks of flesh from other animals. So they'll just like, it's like a mosquito. Think of it as an underwater mosquito, but instead of sucking blood, they just like tear chunks of your flesh out. And they leave this extremely typical round shape wound. A lot of the animals that are seen, they also predate on, like, they'll eat anything. They'll predate on dolphins. They'll like eat larger fish. So yeah, so it just comes and like latches onto a bit of your skin and sort of like goes in a small circle and pulls out a chunk and then like chomps on it. And I think that's extremely naughty. It's so sneaky, but anyway. How are sharks affected by climate change? That's a really large question that I don't think I can answer right now, but I will definitely encourage you to do research on that, because there is a lot of research on this, and the hypotheses are that they will be affected in a lot of different ways, some of which we might even not be realizing at this point. So yeah, Rahi, I wish you like all the best for that journey. Could you share the link of the video for this chat? Oh, of the video. Yes, absolutely. I can send it to SSI. Yeah. And
yes, we will be sharing an email to all participants within a day or two, which will recap everything that you said, and whatever links you want to share, it will be a part of that email.
Okay. Same question. So these rays will not sting or harm you because they're not stingrays. Precautions you should take while tagging them, well, be very careful, because you are like invading the personal space of an animal. But in general, these are very calm and quite placid, these animals, which is really funny because they have the name devil. They're called devil rays because somehow they were imagined to be vicious underwater predators, but they're not. They're vegetarian, so that tells you something. And yeah, like, no, but for stingrays, I think if that's your question, be careful. Don't step on top of them. Don't hover above stingrays. Don't threaten them in any way. So, okay, Brigank is again asking me a question about the tagging. They are sort of similar to the radio collar technology in as much as they do have a satellite pinger on them. It's not the radio collar technology, I think, is based completely on satellite or radio, right? And this is slightly different because these signals don't work underwater. So they will have a tag for radio, but that's only so like a VHF pinger. These tags have a VHF pinger, but only to locate it later when it's been released from the animal. I don't know what a tail chip is. So again, if this is the conversation that you want, like, sorry. The tags have different lifespans. So the ones that you can see on this screenshot was 24 hours. But this is like, because these tags are like composite packages with multiple sensors, and one, they're very expensive. Two, they were built for the express agenda of finding out what they're doing on a small scale and like on small time scales as well. The acoustic ones last about 5 years, some even more. It depends a lot. Like, there are satellite tags that you have that last about 1 year or two. So how long a tag lasts sort of depends on one, the size, two, what sort of tag it is. No, so the lassoing technique is not hurting the shark as it grows, because it's only staying on the shark for 12 to 24 hours. It's not a long-term external tag. Which is the best place to dive and explore sharks in India? I am not sure. I think the Andamans. I've never dived in Lakshadweep, so I can't tell you. In the world, I think the best place to see sharks in all their glory are the islands in the Pacific, because a lot of them are undisturbed. They're like remote, and I have seen photos like most of us of these places, and they look spectacular. But yeah, in India, I think it would have to be one of our beautiful islands. Any pics of a mother shark feeding its baby? They don't feed their babies. Their babies sort of either are ejected from the body of the mother with their own like little sack of yolk that they will feed on while they grow up and become independent beings, or they are born absolutely ready to go, like they're born ready to run. So sharks will not feed their babies. Okay. Oh, I've missed this one. Cancer immune shark skin. What is the research on this? I'm not sure. This is something I knew a very long time ago. I have not done any research on this. That's the answer to that question. That's done. Are we done?
Yes,
What's the
we are
largest?
done.
There was one last question. Okay. The largest individual I have personally come across has to be that blue shark that I showed you the video of. It was, I want to say, between 3 to 4 meters. It's pretty cool. But then again, like, that's not very cool when you consider that other people from our group went and snorkeled with the whale sharks that come to the south of the archipelago. Yeah, that's a bit of a sore spot with me, but yeah, I hope that answers your question. Cool. And to leave you with a slightly positive note, there's like a whole world out there of things that we don't know about these animals. And there's now more and more, with the advance in technology, tools that you can use to study them. There's everything. And I hope at least some of you will or are already going down that path. Thanks so much for listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Diya. That was fantastic.
Thanks, you guys.
Really, really informative. I'm going to get in touch with you separately to get the links of all the videos and anything that you can possibly share with us that we can share with all the attendees. And thank you so much for doing this with us. This was an amazing session.
Dude, yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
I hope that was nice.
Definitely was.
All right.
All right. To
Bye.
all the attendees who are there, we have put in the link for the SSI Ecology courses in the chat window in case anyone of you all are interested. Just check it out. All the information about the courses are there. And yeah, thank you so much for joining in, for being a part of this webinar again. And we will be communicating further with you guys regarding the other webinars that are lined up. Thank you so much for joining in today. Have a good weekend.